first, myself and my co-founder are going to give short introductions. Because we do have a big group today, we're going to keep the introductions short and ask that everyone else who's interested put in the chat, where you're from, what your interest in data is. Feel free to put links in the chat if you want to, like your social media or your LinkedIn, anything like that. There's a big part of this group is about networking, so feel free to make as many connections as you'd like. My name is Amanda Darkangelo. I go by she/her pronouns, and I started this group with Ashley. We actually migrated from a previous group that we had worked on together, but this is really our second month in Salt City Data Community. So welcome to our fledgling new group. We're happy to have you here. I am a senior data consultant with a boutique data firm called CTI Data. I focus on data engineering, including data architecture, data structures, archiving, and all of the things having to do with back-end data. And I will hand it over to Ashley.
Hi everyone, welcome. I'm excited for us to kick off our different speaker sessions about some different career paths with data topics. I'm a data analyst in Syracuse and I work mostly in data cleaning, but I'm super excited to learn tonight, so we'll hand it off.
Okay, well, without further ado, everyone, here is Lacy Lewis.
Wonderful. Let me go ahead and get my screen sharing all good to go here for us. My camera is on a different screen, so if I'm not looking directly at you all, no offense. I need to be able to see the big monitor, but I'm so happy to be here and feel really, I don't know, important, even though I don't feel important. So I just feel really special to talk to you guys. So I'm really, really happy Amanda reached out. So I'm going to sort of give, about me, what I do here for the city of Irving, and then kind of a high level of what data looks like in local government right now. I'm obviously not the expert on all things, right? There are so many cities doing so many different things, and I am going to touch on that. But I am just going to share, what me and my colleague see within our area and region, and then other cities that we work with and partner with nationally, some trends that we have picked up on. So without further ado, so a little bit about me. I did not start in local government. I do get to celebrate 10 years working in the public sector this year, so I'm very excited about that. But I have worked in a couple of other areas. So I started out in the nonprofit sector. That's where I got all started. I worked for a school district for a short time, as well as a college, and then started in local government when I realized what an MPA was. I was sitting there looking at jobs that I wanted and then looked to see what they required, and then learned about what an MPA was. I had never heard of that, but I thought, that's it. I want to do management in the public sector. So went and got my MPA at the University of North Texas. And then now I'm here at the city of Irving, which, if you're not familiar with the DFW area, it's just a mid-sized city just outside of Dallas. So I'm 10 minutes from Dallas going that way. And we are a city of about 256,000. So we're a mid-sized city. So I'm a management analyst within our innovation and performance team. So I have one counterpart who has the same title. He and I share a lot of these duties because we share 23 departments. And then our supervisor, who is the Chief Innovation and Performance Officer. And so some of this stuff he and I share, and then some of it I just manage, while he has other things that he does that I don't manage. So one thing that we do, one major thing that we do, is strategic planning for the city. So we work with our city manager. We're actually going to revamp and do a new strategic plan since ours is now out of date. We're going to present to council in May during our budget kickoff. And so we help departments create their strategic plan, their initiatives, what their key performance indicators are, and then how they can track them. which then goes into project management. So we use an incredible software called Invisio, and we track both the strategic plan initiatives, and so they can go in and update their projects, and then our ACMs and our assistant city managers, excuse me if I use a lot of acronyms, and our directors then get those progress reports every month. And then each budget season, when departments sit down and have all the things that they want to ask money for, they then share those progress reports and those project updates, as well as their dashboards. So that's where that data storytelling comes in. We take all of anything that they're tracking, whatever they want to track, whatever they're currently tracking, and we've created dashboards for all of them. All of the departments have dashboards that are shared internally, and then we have an external dashboard for our residents that just tracks all of the things related to the strategic plan. Because not everything that our departments are tracking is necessarily tied to the strategic plan. Some of it is just KPIs that they want to work on. But anything that's related to strategic plan is on our external dashboard. So we manage all of that. I manage our open data portal. So last year, I noticed that there was a lot of stuff on our data portal that wasn't necessarily those raw applicable data sets. And so I've sort of since overhauled it. But I am responsible for uploading those, meeting with departments, seeing what data sets they would like to put on there, if they have any, what is some good data for them. So right now I'm building a lot of relationships because some of our departments don't really understand what the open data portal is for. So currently working on that. We also manage and curate all of the surveys for the city. So if we have any departments that want to push out a survey to residents or employees, we help them curate those surveys so that they're, asking good questions, asking the right questions. And then we help them with analysis. We also are in charge of our resident survey and employee survey, and we do those every other year. So just today, our resident survey opened, and that'll be open for a month. And then when we get all of that back, we will then curate all of that analysis and then present it to our executive team, who then will then present it to council as well. I manage all of our resident engagement programs. We currently have 3. And I'm actually going to talk about 2 a little more later, but we have an 11-week Civic Academy. And then from that group, that alumni group, we then have a group that we call 2.0 that they are given city data and resources to solve a community issue. The last group that we had, the inaugural group, actually we've only done it once, that met, I actually just built the program that they suggested, and we kicked that off in 2 weeks. Like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about that later because I'm very excited about it. And then lastly, I'm in charge of managing and pushing our data governance framework. Now, I made a new slide for that because I wanted to give you a visual of what that looks like. So within data governance, there's 4 parts. One of the parts, the committee, was established before I came into this role. So I started with the City of Irving 2 years ago. And so the Data Governance Committee was already established. They were already meeting because it was kicked off whenever our city and our team created our open data policy. So that's also when the portal started, was in 2018. So those 2 things were already established when I got here. But just a little bit about the Data Governance Committee. We meet quarterly. They act as the authoritative body. They make those tactical decisions, and they oversee the execution of our data governance mission, whether that's through the strategic plan, our comprehensive plan, or any other initiatives that the city manager wants to push out. And then the open data policy as well. There's only a select number of departments that are represented, and those are we have our city secretary, we have someone from our city attorney's office, city manager's office, and then a few other departments that are heavy in data. So like our GIS guys are on, we have an IT member who works with security, confidentiality, privacy, all of that. So right now we're really just working on together as a group building out this framework. So data sharing agreement is another thing that I'm currently working on. Data sharing agreements, and this is internal, not external. So it's between departments in the city. I have there, it's kind of like our terms and conditions. It's not getting a lot of buy-in at the moment. I think some of our departments don't really see the need for it or the value. So I'm currently working on that, working with our legal team to see if it's something that is really something to be pushed right now, or maybe to wait while we build some trust in that. And one way we're going to do that, I'm so excited, is our data partners. So I just got done building out a curriculum for our first data academy. So utilizing those in departments who work with data on a daily basis, we're going to get them, all on the same page with things like Excel, data accuracy, data quality, all those foundational principles, how to tell stories with data. And then once they all get done with our 8-week academy, then they're going to be the official data partner group. And so they're also going to meet quarterly, and they're going to be really those engaged stakeholders that will inform the data governance committee of stuff that's going on. Because when I came into this role, it was just one person, and it was someone that, wasn't really dealing with the data as much as our data partners were going to do it. So I'm really excited about that. That's going to be a huge thing. And then the data trust, honestly, I haven't really touched just yet because our IT security guy just left, and we had a pretty good working relationship. We had just started building all of this out, and then he left. So that one's a little bit on the back burner. It kind of feels a little overwhelming for me at the moment, but this is sort of what I'm currently working on when I say data governance. I'm happy to go into more detail about that, but like I said, I was going to try to kind of keep this high level, and then if you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them, or try to answer them. So I did want to talk about why it's great to work in the public sector with data. Personal note, I never thought I would be in a position that worked with data. I was very much the non-stats person. That was my weakest part in my master's program, and I dreaded it. I dreaded the idea of working with data and analytics and all of that. And here we are. So I feel like I am a great testament to how there are so many opportunities for so many types of people, because data it's in all things and everything we do. There's so much value in when I meet with departments and I say the word data and they get this scary look in their eye, and I just really start to then explain to them that it's their story, it's their information. How can I best tell your story to make you more efficient, make you more effective, how you can help residents. And so that's what I truly love about it. And I love that in local government, you don't have to be this high-level data scientist necessarily to still work with data. So one of the things I wanted to point out is that there are lots of opportunities right now in local government at all levels, whether you're someone who is terrified, but it kind of sounds interesting. So maybe you want to get into some strategic planning, to sort of mid-level where I know enough, right? And I can use SPSS if I need to, all the way up to, the data scientist levels in bigger cities. So lots and lots of opportunities, which also means you get opportunities to build and create. So for better, for worse, public sector is always a little behind private sector. So, private sector, y'all been working with data for a lot longer than us and doing these cool and crazy things that we just couldn't really imagine until we had to. And now that we have to, cities are becoming more comfortable with creating dashboards that residents can utilize. They're more comfortable building out, innovation teams, things like, business intelligence and things like that is really, becoming super, super popular in your smaller and mid-sized cities. And city councils are starting to see the value in that. So you may get a chance to go to a city and build the entire office or the entire department because they don't have one. There's a city, another city in DFW, and it's not a small city. And a friend of mine called me the other day because she was like, hey, I know you guys do some strategic planning. Maybe you can help us. And like I said, not a small city, but they have no way of tracking their initiatives at the moment. So, and she was like, they're willing to hire someone, they're willing to do all these things. And I said, that's great, because we can absolutely help with that. So lots of opportunities, building and creating. And then of course, lastly, I always try to put Chris Traeger in any presentation I give. You really get that, I'm losing my notes here, I'm so sorry. you get to serve the public, right? You get to have pride in what you do, and you really get a chance to improve residents' lives. It sounds hokey and cheesy, but it's absolutely what we do. So the program I was going to talk about earlier, so we have our Civic Academy, which not only is just an opportunity for residents to learn all about what we do as a city, but it's building that capacity. So we now have over 90 alumni that we can reach out to if we need focus groups. If we have a new program idea, we can kind of feel it out with them, and we know who we can talk to if we need volunteers because they know how the city runs. So in 2020, while we were all working from home, because a lot of us here in local government are back at the office, we did a virtual program, and we called it 2.0. And so we got 9 Civic Academy alumni, and they went through an application process and all that good stuff. And we presented them with a pressing community issue that we got from our resident survey the year before. And we said, here's some data, here's some tools. How can we solve this issue? And so they met for 9 weeks, I believe. I facilitated, provided resources, facilitated conversations. They ran 2 focus groups. They came up with a solution. They presented it to City Council. And in 2 weeks, we'll be kicking off their program idea, which is this resident ambassador program. That's going to target 3 groups that historically have not been engaged within our city. So that's excellent. That's an example. Another great story I love to share is we do data analytics workshops with our departments. And so we do it in smaller cohorts. We don't just meet with all the departments all the time because we don't have the capacity for that. But we did a round of workshops last year with our public works departments, and solid waste services is one of my departments. And they've been struggling for a while, and that's a whole nother story. But through workshopping with them and them teaching them how to create problem statements, doing some SWOT analysis, things like that, talking about analytics, we then learned that there was a whole story that they were not telling. They had tons of data. I didn't know they had it. They didn't realize it was worth anything. And I said, that is what we need to tell council. So I worked with them, created this really wonderful presentation, made them tons of visuals for them. And then when they presented that to council, they then got the support they needed, and they kept hitting a wall. And without that information, now they're getting to serve residents in a better way. Their guys are having better opportunities for some self-care, all kinds of good stuff. So there's lots of stories. I could share stories all night, but you truly get to change how you can serve residents. You can help departments be innovative when, sometimes public sector is a little slow moving. You then get the opportunity to help departments do that. I could talk about why it's great all day, but I'll stop there. I did want to mention, and this is just because I don't want to assume people know some of this stuff. I did want to mention that the size of cities sometimes determines the opportunities. So I did kind of touch on the small, mid, and large, and I know Louisville is just over the small range, but I couldn't find a small city, and I wanted to just have an example. But I wanted to point this out because if you're thinking, oh, I really want to work for a small town because I think that'd be cool, or I have a friend who works in a smaller town, you may not get to do some higher level stuff, but there's still lots to do. So if you're someone who's, an expert in Python or R or something like that, a small city might not be for you, which is fine because those larger cities, they're going to have those resources, they're going to have those staff, they're going to be able to support those sort of more expert levels, whereas smaller cities, they might not have a program at all. So you may get to come in and help them build a strategic plan, talk about project management, do some training like a data academy, just getting people comfortable with using Excel. We have some departments that are really struggling with that. So that's a big piece of our data academy is even though we're a mid-sized city, we have a performance team. Some of my departments still really struggle with Excel, and I don't want them to struggle. I want to help them. So anyway, I put some cities there at the bottom that I really love what they're doing. And in the slides, there's links to all of their departments. So with the smaller cities, Louisville, Texas, which isn't super far from Irving. And I know that they're sort of new to the game because one of my classes was a Smart Cities class in my master's, and we helped them build their dashboard. So I knew that they were newer to the game. So Louisville is on there. In your mid-cities, mid-sized cities, which is where Irving is, we fall in that category. You may see established programs, but they may have a small team. So like here in Irving, there's only 3 of us. They're definitely going to have some type of dashboard. They're going to have a strategic plan. They might even have all those performance measures. There's also lots of opportunities to grow in the mid-sized cities. And of course, this isn't an exhaustive list. I mean, every city's different. You have some cities that may be smaller, but they're very affluent, so they can afford software and things like that, and vice versa. I just wanted to kind of give some examples if this was new information to some people. So Syracuse is on there. Scottsdale, we talk with them a lot. They do some really cool stuff. And then Kansas City is, I've wanted to work for them forever. Maybe one day I'll get to, but they do some really cool stuff too, just telling the data of their city. And then those larger cities, sometimes sky's the limit, right? Because they're a little more progressive. So they're going to sort of see, they want to compete with the private sector. So they're probably going to have an established program of some type, a larger staff, more than likely. They do some of the higher level data analytics because they can afford, a data scientist. They can afford those softwares. And so those 3 cities that really stood out to me whenever I look at things is Louisville. They do some really great stuff. San Antonio has an entire innovation office with an R&D group. They have an innovation academy. They do some really cool stuff, in Boston as well. So those are some examples for you to check out if you're interested. Another thing I thought it was important to share is, unlike private sector, in local government, at least for now, I'm hoping that it'll change. You might see all kinds of different job titles, but they all do the same thing, more or less. So for example, you might see Chief Performance Officer, you might see Chief Innovation Officer, you might see both. Strategic services, that's when you get to those smaller cities, those mid-sized cities. They do a lot of the same work as a chief performance officer. They just have other duties as well because they can only, have that one role. Management analyst, I know sometimes is a position that isn't very familiar to people. The only difference, the only thing to realize there, me and my colleague were talking about this today, is it's just an analyst who then wants to go into city management. So my goal is to be a city manager. And, management analyst is just sort of on that path, that career path, but they more than likely will be working with data. And then on down the list, I won't read it all to you, but these are just different job titles. So if you're looking at cities and you're like, well, I don't see, management analyst anywhere, they may have some of these other options. I did also add at the very bottom, assistant to the city manager. In local government, it's different. That role is different than executive assistant. So executive assistant is what you think it is. It's that admin support to the city manager. Assistant to the city manager is, once again, another step on the pathway to being a city manager. So they do a lot of project management. Right now, most A2s are managing all of that ARPA funding, but they also in some cities do all of the performance management as well. So specific challenges working with data in local government. And I'm going to go to my notes here so I can make sure I touch on everything. Once again, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are things that we struggle with, and other cities that we work with either regionally or nationally, they struggle with as well. So I feel pretty confident that this is pretty common in local government right now anyway. So one thing we really struggle with is the ability to share data with each other, city to city. And this could be for many reasons. It may be sheer volume. We just don't have any way to collect it, store it, share it, all of that. Or it could be PII, that personal identifying information is an issue. We don't have someone to clean it, so then to send it out. And this really is unfortunate because I really think we could benefit, especially regionally. So DFW is such a just sort of one big city in itself, and it would be great if we could share transportation data, for example. We talk about that all the time with our transportation department. Irving, Dallas, like I said, is 10 minutes that way, and we don't talk to each other about transportation stuff. Another example, it would help us with best practices. So one of the things I love about local government is that we talk to each other, we share things, whether it's a procedure that works better or a policy or a guide. You know, we don't try to reinvent the wheel because we usually don't have the time or the resources to do so. But sharing data could really help us with best practices and help influence decision. We were talking about the ice storm this week. I don't know if y'all heard about the horrible ice storm we had last year where hundreds of people died. But we are about to have another one starting tomorrow. And so we're all getting a little nervous, and it would be great if these regional cities would be able to, you know, share information, and we don't have that capacity right now. Another thing is data collection and data storage. So unlike the private sector, right, everyone that we would love to get data from, they have to opt in. So we have to provide those opportunities for them to fill out a form, fill out a survey, click to opt in. It's not just automatic because we have legal issues, right? Like FOIA, we have to, you know, be aware of how to protect information and how to, you know, be ready to give it. You know, FOIA, someone sends in an open records request, we then have to send it out. Storage then, of course, could be a big issue, but because of FOIA, we have certain retention time periods that we have to keep information. So we're a little stingy sometimes because we can only have so much storage. We can't afford more. We can't afford, even for the cloud, right? Like you still have to buy things to store it in. So we can't, you know, really handle big data lakes, at least not in the small and mid-size. Bigger cities, you might see they handle that a little better. But overall, that's still a problem. And then because of that, you know, there's automation issues. So because of our opt-in situation, a lot of our data is manually entered. So there's a lot of data time devoted to data cleaning because we just get crappy data. When you manually enter a bunch of stuff, it just doesn't really go well. Resources and talent. So it's not that we don't want the best, right? It's not that we don't want the experts. It's we either don't have the resources to purchase the wonderful software, or if it's free, like R is, we can't afford the people that know how to use R. We can't afford the time to train people on how to use R. My hope is that in the future, all of local government will be using R, but that's just a personal hope. But it's definitely not going to be soon. Anytime I mention R, which I try to mention it in as many circles as I can, my husband is a data scientist who uses R daily. I try to spread the word, and there's just a lot of anxiety around that because it just seems too hard, right? Too high level. How are we going to have the time? How can we afford to pay someone? And that's all over, even in the bigger cities. So I used to work for the city of Dallas, and they were starting to build their data analytics team. And even in Dallas, there was some apprehension about that because we just can't match you know, the private sector in those salaries. And lastly, I just want to mention, I didn't have it here on the slide, but you know, legacy institutions, right? We are still kind of battling older mindsets that are really terrified of things like data, either because they're worried it might show quote unquote, you know, information they don't want to share, or they don't really understand the value and what we can use with it, how we can get, you know, their budget requests approved and how we can show the residents that services have improved, things like that. So that org culture, that sort of legacy institutional thinking is still very, very real in local government. And some of that's from our city council side, right? So we follow what city council sets by policy. And if they're not ready to kind of move forward, we have to sometimes wait, and that can just take some time. So we come across that working with our departments all the time. So it's just gonna take time, and we're aware of that. So lastly, one thing I want to talk about is what works cities, because it really is an effort to help cities with all of these issues. So this organization, it was launched by Bloomberg Philanthropies back in April 2015. And it was one of the largest ever efforts to enhance cities' use of data and evidence. So they started with 9 cities and now they're up to 50. And what they do, and I put the link there within the slide deck so you can check out their page. They basically, if you're interested and you have to be a city of 30,000 or more, but you contact them and you sort of fill out a form, and then they contact you and they have this criteria that's listed here on the slide. And what's been really great is through the certification process. So then you go through the criteria and you see, are we doing these things? You get documentation. It's this whole crazy process. I think it took us 2 years to go through it all. But what's really great about it is that it's not an award for an award's sake, right? Through this criteria, we have now been able to build out things that I don't think we would have been able to do without it, because it gave us a framework. So data governance, for example, let me zoom in here real quick. So it's looking at, that's how we created our data governance committee. That's how we started building out our framework. Evaluations, general management is, what is your leadership? What are they doing to sort of seek to ensure that, data is being used to drive decision making. Open data, we now have our open data portal because of the criteria that we worked hard to match, and on down the list. So I really wanted to highlight what they are doing, because they're now, I don't remember if I said this already, but they're now at 50 cities that have been certified, which means there are 50 cities that have gone through this criteria and either mastered it or started working on it, which means they now have the framework to know how to do it. And so that has been huge. And then with that, if you're a What Works City, they give you resources. So we get access to training. I want to say I met Amanda in one of the courses, actually. But you get to do all these courses, all these trainings, and it doesn't cost us anything, because we are it's like you're a member of What Works City. So wanted to mention that if you're just interested in checking them out, whether you work for a city or not, excellent program, super, super cool stuff. And they're just one example to me of how really, local government, public sector is going the way that private sector has been. Like I said, it just takes us a little longer sometimes. But with these frameworks, it's really been helping cities really shore up what they're already doing, or if they're not doing it, showing them how to do it. And that's it. That's all I got.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lacy. And we'll open this up to questions. Go ahead, Lillian.
Hi, thank you so much for presenting, first of all, Lacy. I found that really informative, and I'm working on my MPA right now, so it's really exciting to hear about how somebody used that degree and combined it with data analytics to further the public interest. I wanted to ask, so you were speaking about your program and how when you were in it, you weren't as into the statistical side of things. For somebody who works in the public sector, like, what would be your advice if you don't have much of a tech background to like pivot into becoming a management analyst?
Great question. Our technical, so my colleague, he compliments me in that way. He is much more knowledgeable of like SPSS, that statistical side, but we don't go that deep. And that's just the nature of kind of where our city is at. So I think if you're someone that is either wanting to get more into it, sort of cut their teeth, if you will, those smaller and mid-sized cities, which is why I talked about that, we just don't have a chance to go that deep. We don't have a chance to get that technical. Do we have an SPSS account? Sure. Have I ever used it in 2 years? No. Now, does that mean we might not use it in the future? Of course not. But for now, we sort of have to meet where our departments are at. So like I mentioned earlier, I have some of my department liaisons that they can't make an Excel table to save their lives. And to me, that says, okay, let's get them there, right? Let's do that first. And then we can talk about data analytics, right? How are you going to feel okay talking about forecasting and data storytelling and visualization if a table stresses you out? So I cared a lot about that. And so hoping that, you know, we sort of get everyone on the same level. But really, yeah, there's just a lot of cities that just aren't ready to go that deep. And it's not necessarily because we don't want to, it's just, that's just the place we're at, you know, where we're really deep into performance management, not measurement. I always talk about that. Those are two different things. That measurement piece is that more technical area, and the management is, okay, let's build your dashboard. I can do that. I can make visualizations. I can talk to you about percentage differences and things like that. So if you're someone that is more like me, you know, those smaller mid-sized cities are great opportunities to get your feet wet. Now, if you're someone that is, I like the technical stuff, I want to get really deep into the data, cleaning it, you know, doing all the disaggregation, all of that, those bigger cities are going to have those opportunities because they are ready. They've been working on this a lot longer than some of the other cities, and so they're going to have those opportunities.
Thanks so much.
Congrats on your MPA. So
Thank you.
Michelle.
we can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Michelle.
You know, I used to be good at technology. You know, I'm one of those geriatric millennials. I don't know how that happened. It's, you know, whatever. So anyway, I've been working in higher education for 20 years in student affairs, right? And so this is a lot of the same stuff is in the public sector. The pace of change is just different, and so I'm trying to kind of get up to speed with what is going on in the real modern world outside of the strange, you know, wonderful yet strange little bubble. So really interesting program, so thanks. But I'm curious about your academy, so the 8-week data academy. Like, how do you help bring people along on this data journey, because that's what we need help with?
Yes. So what I'm hearing, and just make sure because I don't want to go in the wrong direction. You're wanting to talk more about the buy-in part, correct? Okay, cool. Because I can talk about that curriculum, I have yet to, I'm presenting to all the directors in March. That's when we hope to sort of kick this off. Now, what I have been doing when I came into this role, sort of quickly realized that we don't have the clout that I think we wish we did. Not yet, anyway. So whenever we come to departments, sometimes they're like, what do you guys do again? Like, there's not that trust. And once I started realizing that, then I sort of pivoted. So anytime I met with my departments, because we try to meet with them quarterly, if not much more often, to go over their dashboards. I didn't stress so much on the scary words like data, and that's what I was talking about earlier. I talked about your story, your information, what's going on with y'all, sort of check-ins to really start building that trust in those in that relationship. Because I was a new analyst, they didn't know me, but also, yeah, how am I going to get them to, you know, do anything? How am I going to work with them if they're just, you know? And there's a lot of context and history with that. You know, every organization has some context and history that may have derailed what you're trying to do. You know, that's nothing new, but I definitely started realizing that. So I've been working on that for 1.5 years, and I've been spreading this word. Every time I meet with people, I'm like, hey, I think you'd be a really good candidate for our data academy. Here's what we're going to do. And then they would say, yeah, that sounds great. So that by the time I present it to their boss, because I'm not asking the directors anything. I'm just talking to them about it and saying, hey, who do you have in mind? I feel much better about it. And so I think just like anything, right? Building that trust, making things a little less scary, because data can be scary, whether it was a bad history of someone really messing it up or just not, you know, in solid waste, that story I told earlier, you know, solid waste, man, in a lot of cities is just really, really struggling. And for lots of reasons, and COVID just made it worse. And so with my solid waste director, you know, I met with him and his manager and just said, like, how can I help you? What can we do? And then once that was the conversation, so much more came out. And then it turned into, well, holy cow, y'all aren't even tracking that. We need to show all of that. And then we created it. And then they had this presentation and city council was like, whoa, we didn't know it was this bad. And then it changed. So I hope that answered your question. I mean, I feel like it's a lot like lots of things, right? Just building that trust, making it so that they know, like, I'm here to help. We're sort of the internal consultants, right? We are here to serve you. What can I do to get you your money, to get you better XYZ? And then that really opens the door.
This is Prasanna. So I work for a county government in their IT department. So I have a question, like I'm trying to do this. I've been working there for 15 years, almost 14 to 15 years now. So I have like worked with data all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I've been trying is to just change the mindset of people here to go more towards the analytics. So I developed this lot of dashboards and everything. My biggest challenge is we presented everything laid out, like how you can use it instead of going to, you know, tons of spreadsheets. Here you have everything on one place where you can go access your data. You do not even have to ask for data. It's right there. Like,
Yeah.
So many things. But my biggest challenge is what I'm facing is how to make them use it. When I look at my reports, like, okay, what is the usage? I do not see it there. Like, even we have opened it to so many people, like higher management and everybody. It's not happening. So to me, that's getting data from this departments or the stakeholder is, if it is one issue or one problem, then the other is how to make them work, how to make them use it. So what do you suggest, like the strategy, or how, what do you think I should do to make it, like, you know, people use it, trust it, and improve it? Like, unless they use it, I can't do anything to improve it, because the feedback is the most important part of all this.
Right. One thing I haven't mentioned, and that is, I mean, key, is you have to have that champion, and it needs to be someone from the executive level.
Mm-hmm.
So if our city manager didn't support us, if our ACNs didn't support us, I mean, we wouldn't be able to do any of this, right? It's got to be pushed from the top. So whether that's your top or mid-top, you know, you've got to have a champion to really push, hey, we need to start doing this because it's going to add all this value, right? Or, hey, we need to start doing this. We're the only county that doesn't do it, or fill in the blank, right? So I'm not sure what your role is, but, you know, you've got to find that champion to really understand the value in it. So our ACM who just left, right, but he may not have understood everything we did, but he knew what we did was important. And so always pushed our projects, always pushed what we were doing. And our new ACM is going to do the same thing, but that is absolutely key. And I haven't mentioned that. So however you need to do that, you know, find that champion, get them on board. And then another thing that's really helpful is find out what people are doing in your area. So I'm always reaching out to other cities, and I'll reach out to anyone, anywhere, but regional sort of best practices puts a little pressure as well, right? If you're the only county that's not pushing out, you know, a COVID dashboard, or if you're the only county that's not tracking X, Y, and Z, you know, y'all are the outliers, right? You can kind of use that competition as another way to say, hey, like, nobody in our county can access, you know, whatever data you're wanting to show, because that is a big thing with county. You know, I don't know how it is where y'all are, but in Texas, I mean, county, that's the health department. We don't have health departments as cities. We have them by the county. So, you know, talk about how important data was in the past couple of years from the county. I can't imagine not having that data. So those are the two things I suggest. Really finding that champion to help push what you're wanting to do and show the value in that, and they can push why that's valuable. And then contact, you know, some of your colleagues in your area, in your region, and see kind of what they're doing, and then bring, you could even bring that to who you might think could champion it and say, hey, we need to be doing better. And then from there, right, it's back to building that trust, building that value. It's very much like, what's in it for me, right? I really hate that phrase. My boss loves it. I just, I really hate it because I shouldn't have to, right? I shouldn't have to prove why what I'm bringing to you is valuable, but I do it because I know that some people, that's the only way they're going to hear the message. So those are, I guess, 3 things that I would suggest starting with.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Lacy? Mohammed.
We see your hand, Mohammed, if you want to go ahead. We just can't hear you.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So how do we keep the data bias out of the data and when we analyze the data, especially in the government sectors? So how do we do that? Because it's a big challenge where if you are in New York, so it's more, like democratic, or if it's in Texas, so it's the view of the data is much different. I'm a Texas Tech graduate. I just graduated from Texas Tech. So and I keep a track on weather. And one thing I did realize that the cost that could have using the data that they know that, I mean, these people, they know the counties and the government, local government, they know the impacts of it, but based on their ideology, they don't support that data, or they don't spread the message like, hey, be careful out there. So how do we take that bias out of it? So
Great question. We deal with that all the time. That is the dark side, right, of local government. It's that, for all you MPA students, it's that, political admin dichotomy, right? So you have the politics side, you have your council, your mayor, your elected officials who are deciding things and policy and all of that. And then you have your admin side, right, which are the staff. You have that in state, you have it in federal. But you have that dichotomy, and I don't get to have that political say. My job, I work for the city of Irving. I do, city council doesn't want to do a strategic plan. That's their choice. So we then figure out, okay, how are we going to track these initiatives? True story from city of Irving right there. So that's a great question, right? So bias, for example, when I created our data governance guide, because we didn't necessarily have one, we had a mission and a vision and responsibilities. And I thought we need more than that. And that was another GovX course I did. It was building out our guide, which I shared with Amanda and Ashley if you all want to read it. But it really goes into detail about that data governance framework. And in one of the sections, and I'm going to pull it up so I don't say, nope, I'm not going to pull it up. It's going to take too long. We talk about, ethics. So it's the forts, right? I put the forts in there, and I explained it out. And one of the things in there mentions the word bias, right? So I wasn't worried about that word because I know it's a scientific word and I know what it means related to data. I go to the data governance committee and I say, hey, here's this guide, which they had it beforehand to read and let me know if they saw any issues, any edits, all of that. So I open up our meeting and I'm like, okay, what do you guys think about the guide? What are your thoughts? The only thing they mentioned was how they wanted the word bias out. We don't want that word in there. And I said, well, tell me more about that. Because I'm not really sure, we have good ethics, right? Like, why would you not want good ethics in our guide? I wasn't understanding what they were. And I had 2 members who were very passionate because bias to them was, racism. Well, we're not racist. And I said, well, biases is, and I explained what data bias is, right? And it just wasn't getting through. So I just kind of let it go. And so I said, okay, I'm going to work on that and I'll come back to you all, which is one thing, right? Choose your battles. If you're in an area that's very politically not somewhere you want to be, right? Just choose your battles. And so I knew that pushing it wasn't getting me anywhere. So I said, you know what? I'm going to work on that. I'll get something back to you, whatever. So I said, anything else? And they're like, no, looks good, great. I said, okay, awesome. We moved on to the next thing. After our meeting, I, went and found some great research, found, a better phrasing of what data bias is. Talked to my boss and said, they're not getting it, they don't realize what it's talking about and how we already are doing this just fine. This is just a way of saying it, and on and on and on. So I kind of put my thoughts together and then sent an email out to the DGC and just said, just wanted to follow up on that conversation and and then they didn't have any other thoughts. So to me, I feel like I'm rambling here, but it's education, right? Education is a big piece. So if I can teach someone what data bias is, if I can teach someone what data quality is, data inaccuracy, that it's not about you as a person. It's just, hey, our process is not working. Let's work on this process. It's not that you're inaccurate or you're, not, there's just a lot of personal things in a lot of local government cultures. I think there's a lot of, with the silos, with the ownership, there's just a lot of, well, this is mine. And you're saying that my stuff is wrong? Like, well, yes, but then you learn how to rephrase that, right? Because it's not a personal attack. So I deal with that all the time. And, you're like, whatever city you're at, you'll learn the context, you'll learn the culture. And when you come up against those sort of political situations that really don't support what you're working, you just find new ways to talk about it. We do that all the time here. We've got, COVID just really, it's really been a fun time. So you find new ways to talk about it. You find ways to educate that's just in a really broad way. And that seems to go really well. Because once again, I have built those relationships, right? So those people on DGC, I have been meeting with them. I had been talking with them about things so that when I didn't fight back, I wasn't there to argue and I let them speak. And then I came back with some new information to kind of explain what I was saying. Then it was crickets. And I'm not saying I win every battle, but I'm definitely doing my best of just focusing on the education piece. And then hopefully we'll get there, right? So I hope that's helpful. And congrats, by the way, on graduation.
And thank you. Yes, and one unique thing about the situation that is going to develop over on Wednesday is that the ice storm is going to coincide exactly on the same days and the same period as of what was last year, and yet no lessons were learned based on the data that we had. So that's kind of sad.
Yeah, it definitely in cultures and situations like being in Texas, right? It doesn't matter what the data says sometimes. It doesn't matter. And you're like, yeah, yes, it does. This is it. This is the true story. So you just got to find new ways to talk about it. And then sometimes we're going to lose, just like you said with the storm stuff. Those of us here in Texas, yeah, we're really worried about the next couple of days. If y'all will think about us, if not see us on the news in a couple of days, I hope not. But yeah, we're really worried because yeah, they really didn't do anything to fix anything, and that's a great example, right? Of that's a battle we are losing. But anyway, real quick, I just thought of the lady that asked about the county. See if you guys have a council of governments. I think that's right, because we have the North Texas Council of Governments, and they are sort of a separate entity that works with cities and counties. And I'm hoping that's a national thing. If not, please reach out to me and I will get you connected. I'm sure Amanda and Ashley will I'm happy to give my email out for any follow-ups or anything like that. But they do incredible work getting all of the counties sort of on the same page with stuff.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So I think we have time for one more question. Before we do, just as a note, Ashley and I will both be putting our email addresses in the chat. So if you have any follow-up questions or suggest speaker sessions or suggest training sessions you want to do, so we'll be doing that now. And then are there any other questions for Lacy?
I think no questions, but thank you so much for the session. The only thing I wanted to highlight, so I've been living in Singapore for almost 12 years now. So I'm currently in Boston for a couple of months and just experiencing the cold, vastly different weather from Singapore. It's quite interesting to hear a lot of these challenges that you might be facing, as well as the progress you have made, because you would think that this is very limited to a particular county or a city or a state, regardless of size. But even in a place like Singapore, which is considered a little bit more advanced, we have the same issues for a very long time. Data was not publicly available for a long time. People did not want to um, they did not want to invest in technology, and whatever the technology said, they did not want to really hear it out in its fullest form. Now, obviously, things have changed a lot. Like AWS, for instance, Amazon Web Services Cloud was not a thing for a long time. There was so much resistance for them to even set up a base there, and now it has transformed slowly, very, very gradually. So a lot of these challenges are not limited there. So my own role is really about working with APIs and API management. So really taking that data and making it available as much as possible in a secure manner. So that's why I've got a chance to work with a lot of people around this. And I can totally relate about people being hesitant about adoption of technology, being hesitant about the stories that are coming out of it, and how to make it available. My only question is, you mentioned about the open data access that you've been working on. Is there a link that I could probably look at some of the data that's available? Is that available publicly, or is
Yeah,
that...
yeah. So the city, so first off, the cities that I put links to in that one slide where I put specific cities, you can go to all of their open data portals. They're going to be a little more robust than ours, but I'm still happy to share ours with you as well. And I can put that in the chat just before we're done, or send it however y'all want me to do it, Amanda and Ashley. But I'm really glad you brought that up, because that is another example of retelling the story. So whenever I realized our open data portal wasn't all it could be, let's just say that, it was a lot of PDFs, not data sets. And I thought, oh no, like we need to get more data sets on there. So I sort of I started with, what are our top open records requests? What are people asking for the most? And then from that, what data sets then can I put on the open data portal? So I started there, got great information, and then started emailing the people, right? Nothing. I didn't hear anything. No one would talk to me. No one would, So then I thought, okay, I'm not telling this the right way. So then I met with, structure fires is one of the top open records requests we get. That's a data set. No one should be spending time. So I had to do some digging, found the fire chief that I needed to talk to, or assistant chief, can't remember his title, but I said, hey man, I'm here to help you with your open records requests. And he was like, really? I said, yeah. How many do you get about structure fires? And then from there, he was like, take it. Get it off our plate. And so I thought, oh, I need to point out that if you have data sets that you're just giving out on a regular basis, and it was 40% of his admin assistant's time that now is free. So that changed everything. And so once I started pointing out, this is going to help you with your ORRs, they were like, oh, take them, put them all on there. So that's a great example. But I can pull up I'll put it in the chat real quick. But yeah, those other cities, Boston has an incredible open data portal. They have tons and tons of data. All of those cities that I had linked in there should have them. But so ours isn't as robust as I want it to be, but we're getting there. We're working on it.
And I did just put the link to all of the WhatWorks cities, certified cities, in the chat. Though the majority of those cities will also have open data.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. Lacy, if you want to put your contact information in the chat just quickly. We will be meeting again. Sorry, I should have had this up already. We'll be meeting again in 2 weeks, I believe. We're meeting for a projects session. For those of you who don't know, our project sessions are open workspaces where you can collaborate with others. The goal is to come together and build and create things from data to solve problems for people. So we're going to be talking about SMART goals and how to structure a project. So that's on Wednesday, February 9th. And then our next speaker session is with Professor Steve Wallace, who is going to talk to us about data in healthcare. He's a professor at Syracuse University and has also been a part of C-level structures for different healthcare startups in the past. So he has a lot of experience in both technology and healthcare, and will be talking to us about how data intertwines with all of that, which would be very interesting. So join us for that on February 15th. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lacy.
Thanks, Lacy.